peace, and welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation as we get into it. First and foremost, happy Kwanzaa, folks. It is the second day of the special week, the celebration of African American history. And today, folks, we're kicking it off. Let's first talk about the Michigan Supreme Court, how they have decided to reject the case to remove former President Donald Trump from the 2024 ballot. We're going to talk about the significance of this and looking at what has already happened in the state of Colorado. So we'll talk about that. Also, there's a new poll that shows that Black voters are tired of the Supreme Court and they want that we want new reforms. We'll talk a little bit about that. Also later on, is Black America fed up with the Black super rich? As we look at some of the trials and tribulations around Oprah Winfrey, Tyler Perry, TD Jakes, and more. We'll discuss that. And then later on, is Kwanzaa more important now, more than ever before, as we're celebrating African American history? But more importantly, are we still making space for the week-long celebration? So we'll have that discussion. And of course, hear from you as our online culture crew. So stay with us. It's all happening on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. All right, folks, welcome to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Oh, man. Happy Wednesday. Happy Kwanzaa, folks. That's right. There you go. Second day of the week-long celebration. We're going to be talking about Kuji Chakalea, folks. It's self-determination. And big shout out to all of those who are celebrating Kwanzaa this year. If this is your first year, if this is your 101st year, your 10th year, your 20th year, this is a major, major time of year. So big shout out to all of you. Big shout out to the folks that make this thing happen each and every day. Let me just tell you, make sure you go to our website today at blackstarnetwork.com. Download the app for free. Follow us on social media. But we're streaming live right now on our home network of blackstarnetwork.com. And we want your financial support as well. So make sure you do your due diligence to find something in your heart to give. If you gave to everybody else, you say, oh man, it's the end of the year for Raj. You only got a few days left. Let's end the year on a strong note. We're asking for small donation. Any donation that you can give, any donation that you can sacrifice to make will be greatly, greatly appreciated as we continue to do the work of paving the way for Black digital media. So again, go to our website today and definitely give today. And we thank you for your support. Also, we're streaming live on Amazon News on your Amazon Fire TV. You can find us there on Amazon Prime Video. You can find us there under the Prime Video app under Live TV, The News. Or find us on Amazon.com under Prime Video, Live TV, The News as well. So definitely check us out there. We're also on Freevee, folks. And you can find us on Freevee. Find us on Now under News. We're there. And you can find us on Plex TV 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Just search for Black Star Network. Or find us on the Live TV, The News, and Opinion. All right, let me jump into where you can find the online culture crew. This is the group of folks that ride with me each and every day to share their thoughts about the conversations, about the topics that we're going to be discussing. And big shout out to the online culture crew on the X platform. Big shout out to the crew on the Facebook platform. And of course, big shout out to the crew on the YouTube channel of Roland Martin's YouTube page. Big shout out to all of you. So I see it, the Remitress, you are back in the chat. Good connecting with you once again. Pastor Damon Blissett, good to connect with you. Frank Evans, I see you. Mickey, I see you. Marky Lee, Rodney Avery, I hear you. You said Trump 2024 in prison. David Crisp, thank you so much for checking in. Cindy D, thank you for checking in once again. Tonio Hurd, thank you so much, bro. Appreciate you. Who else we got in the chat? Conscious Thought, I see you. Miss Pauline Hurt, I see you. Many more of you are gathering right now. But you know who's not in the chat, but she's on the platform today, y'all? It's Wednesday, and I'm always happy to have my sister joining me, the great Suzette Speaks, the attorney from the state of Florida, the host of the Suzette Speaks show on YouTube.
Hey, y'all. How you doing? Season's greetings, all that. Blessing. Happy Kwanzaa. Happy Kwanzaa.
I don't know why I'm shimmying right now. I guess it's just the fact.
It's the vibe. Good to see everybody. Thank y'all for watching. Shout out to Team Replay.
There we go. There we go. There you go. Why? This is that the team is really excited about the horn today.
I love it.
But make sure y'all do your due diligence. Follow Suzette Speaks on her platform, Pantheon. Make sure you follow her on social media and check out her show. She's super dope. All right, Suzette, let's put you to work right now. Let's put you to work real quick. We ain't not gonna let you off. No break, at least not for the day.
We stay busy.
Let's talk about what's going on with this. Well, first, let's take a quick pause. We're going to talk about the Supreme Court because Michigan has decided to reject the case to remove President Trump, former President Donald Trump, from the ballot for 2024. How this is going to impact the larger picture of not just of the election, but just this movement around state after states who are saying, you know what, we might have to consider whether we can keep him on the ballot because of his involvement with the January 6th situation. So we're going to take a quick pause. When we come back, we'll have the conversation. We want to hear from you, crew. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punching!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation as I'm talking to my sister, Suzette Speaks, host of the Suzette Speaks Show and attorney from the state of Florida. All right, Suzette, let's talk about this latest situation out of Michigan, where the Michigan Supreme Court has announced that they're rejecting the case to remove former President Donald Trump from the 2024 ballot. This is, of course, coming on the heels of the big decision by the state of Colorado, who said that they're going to remove him from the ballot. So Michigan is saying, we're going to keep him on the ballot for right now. And this is an interesting trend. There was a lot of talk. I remember early in the year, there was some rumblings about states, looking at or at least considering whether they should take the former president off because of his involvement with the January 6th storming of the Capitol. And because of the fact that he got all these indictments, he just got a lot of stuff happening, legal issues happening. But it's all stemming from January 6th. And that phone call that he made to a number of voting officials in different states, Georgia and other places, to try to get them to swing the 2020 election. So he's in a battle to stay on the ballot. But let me just share with folks what this says in Michigan. Take a look at this. This is from NBC News. The court orders blocks effort to remove Trump from the 2024 ballot under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, which states no one who has engaged in insurrection or rebellion after having sworn an oath to support and the Constitution can hold office. In a brief order issued Wednesday, the court said in Michigan, it declined to hear a case arguing that Trump should be left off of the state's ballot because it is not persuaded that the questions presented should be reviewed by this court. Is this passing the buck, Suzanne?
No, Farajii, we just have, different perspectives from different parts of the country. So we have different states. I've always kind of reiterated here that we have 50 different small, but yet very impactful court systems in our country because of 50 different states. And we also have a 51st, which is the federal court system based on the statutory layout of the Congress and the U.S. government. So let's start with, we have two different states and two different outcomes. How did we get there? So we discussed on the show last week, Colorado, right? So Colorado saw a case that was brought trying to remove Mr. Trump from the ballot there. And the Colorado Supreme Court, as you stated, did find that he had, in fact, participated in an insurrection. And therefore, as a matter of law, meaning there's no further steps necessary, the law was enacted by Congress and it has been applied in the past the same ways where if it was your own action that can be determined to be involved in trying to overthrow the government, you cannot run for federal office. So where does that stem from? As you pointed out, it comes from what happened in our country during the transition of power during the last election, where President Trump was participating in activities that many deem was trying to stop the transfer of power and reverse the will of the voters of the United States by trying to remain in power, even though he lost the election. So in Colorado, they took a different view because their 3 layers of court systems. Remember, I told you there's a lower court, which is called the trial court, but it has different names in different states and different names when it comes to the federal government, but lower, middle tier, and the Supreme Court. So that's the basic layout of most states and also our federal government. So the Colorado court was looking at fact finding as to whether or not did his behavior rise to that occasion. They listened to witnesses. The Court of Appeals sat with folks who were there and took testimony and therefore made a ruling that because, in their opinion, he violated the 14th Amendment, he cannot be on the ballot. Now let's switch to Michigan. It was a completely different question that was really being raised. There was a group that filed this lawsuit. They are called Free Speech for the People on behalf of voters in Michigan. This is not the first time they as an advocacy group has been filing lawsuits in this question. So they did it in Minnesota. They lost in Minnesota. They filed a recent one in Oregon as well. But in the Michigan case, they were resting their case on a specific question, which was different from the Colorado case. The question in Michigan is whether or not under their statutes and laws in Michigan, under that they call it statutory scheme, would the Secretary of State of Michigan, the person who is in charge of elections, have the right to remove Mr. Trump from the ballot as a matter of law because of the Secretary of State's determination that he violated the 14th Amendment? Or is it up to the parties under Michigan law to present a candidate, whether he is or she is qualified or not by law? And would they be allowed to remain on the ballot because the parties have, under the Michigan law, provided the candidate. And they have a different system in Michigan, which is also the Secretary of State looks at polling numbers to determine leading, and then they go to the parties, ask for the nomination is brought forth. So what the Michigan Supreme Court did was very interesting. They only released a 1-paragraph comment. I wouldn't even really call it a majority opinion of such, right? They said, we're sticking with what the appeals court said. And the Michigan appeals court, the middle tier, voted 3-0 to say that the Secretary of State there does not have the right to remove someone who they deem is in violation of the 14th Amendment from the ballot. So the questions are a little bit different. So in Colorado, it was more of, was he actually guilty, or could he be found by a matter of law of having participated in activities that could be deemed as insurrection? And the Colorado Supreme Court ruled based on that question that he could not be placed on the ballot because he was found in violation. But the Michigan Supreme Court, again, was more of a technical, I would call it more narrow question, was whether or not the the Secretary of State in Michigan can make a determination to qualify or disqualify a candidate that is proposed or put forward by the political parties there in Michigan. And their answer is no. So now that we have 2 different states with 2 different rulings, we have one United States Constitution, one law governing this great land. What happens? It goes to the Supreme Court. So now the Supreme Court already was expecting an appeal in the Colorado case because Mr. Trump's team has until January 4th in the Colorado case to file their appeal. And they were going to obviously appeal it to the Supreme Court. And now when we have what we call diversity of opinions within our United States, different states having different rulings, we see those. We got to have one decision because, again, there's one constitution and body of law that governs this great land. So it will go to the Supreme Court ultimately to decide whether he should or should not be on the ballot, because there are actually, I believe it's 12 more states as of this show who are also, considering, or there have been filings by advocacy groups and others to try to make a determination as to whether he should be under the 14th Amendment excluded from the ballot.
Wow. It sounds, so we got to take another quick pause, but one of the things that I'm keeping in mind that this is, we saw Colorado say yes, take them off. Michigan is saying no. Now, I feel like we're going to be going through a marathon of decisions and interpretations of this 14th Amendment, Section 3, right? Like there's going to be a lot of discussion about this. And I'm wondering, I know we got to take a quick pause, but Suzette, on the other side, I'm wondering, how does that play out in terms of the timing of when each election is scheduled to take place, right? Like these decisions and looking at the primary schedule for 2024. Like, for example, we know South Carolina starts it off in February with the season. So, I want to get a sense of that, because that's the one thing that I know Trump and his legal team is betting on, is that, all of this is kind of like he has hearings, he got the primary elections in states, and now he's got these new decisions that have to be made. And it's a very short period of time. It's a very short period of time to try to figure it out. So I want to get your take on that. Crew, I want to hear from you as well. Make sure you post your comments on the chat as we're streaming live on Roland Martin's YouTube page, Roland Martin's Facebook page. Make sure that you hit us up on X as we're on that platform as well. And of course, stay with us. We still got a lot to talk about in this first half of the culture right here on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all. All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture. Weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. We've been talking about former President Donald Trump, who is once again embroiled in a number of legal woes, but one of them is allowing his name to be on ballots in various states, a number of states who are now considering possibly removing the former president from their ballot for the 2024 election season because of his involvement with the January 6th storming of the Capitol. And this is all based on Section 3 of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution that states that no one who has engaged in insurrection or rebellion after having sworn an oath to support and defend the Constitution can hold office. You would think it would be crystal clear to states across the country that this man has not qualified to be on the ballot simply because of his involvement. But it's not quite clear to the judicial branch of our government. And what we're seeing is it's going to be quite a ride for the next few months. And we've been checking in with our sister Suzette Speaks, who is the host of the Suzette Speaks show, an attorney in the state of Florida. But Suzette, I want to get your take on the timing situation. Because if you have the primaries happening next year, kicking off in February for the Democrats and everything, those primaries, you still got I think the Republicans' schedule is, the court outside of the debates, they're going to be, caucusing and all of those things, those caucuses and those elections take place. You got his court hearings because of the stuff the 4 indictments that he has. And now you got this, where states got to figure out if he is going to be on the ballot. How does that fit? And, let's not forget the big thing. The Supreme Court already said that they're not going to do any type of, they're not going to move expeditiously and looking at Trump's case, even though Special Counsel Jack Smith for the Biden administration has been urging him to do so because of his involvement with January 6th. So how does that play into the timing, and what does that look like for the American voter?
Well, the elections are upon us, Farajii. Now, I haven't said Happy New Year to anyone yet, but it's pretty much here. And we're looking at the Iowa caucuses for the Republican side starting in January. So as of January 15th, 99 counties in Iowa will be gathering at their local precincts and voting, right? Or caucusing for who their selection is for president. Then right away, we're looking at New Hampshire, who will also hold a primary. Again, the Democrats have now decided that South Carolina will be their first primary, but New Hampshire law has them still holding their primary prior to South Carolina. That's January 23rd, right? And then we're looking at South Carolina February 3rd. So right now, these critical questions are, of the utmost importance. That's why I know that obviously the Supreme Court has to take this up, because there cannot be two divergent opinions and at this magnitude within the states. We need one rule of law. So the Supreme Court will definitely have its work cut out for it when it gets these two divergent cases, and will ultimately decide whether or not Mr. Trump should be on ballots across our country.
And for the American people, for Black voters and for white voters and all of those who are planning, all of us who are planning to go to the polls during the primary season and of course leading up to the general election, how does this fit? What do you say if for the Democratic Party? What do you say? Do you not mention this at all? Do you kind of let this thing play out, or do you kind of capitalize on it by mentioning it and putting it as a part of your campaign strategy?
Yeah, I think both sides are going to look to capitalize on what is really confusion as of right now, because we have two very different takes on the same principle, the 14th Amendment, Section 3. So you have Trump's side who will capitalize on the fact that they are going to see if their supporters agree with their contention, which is really likely, that, again, this is the system, the deep state, or whatever they're calling it now, attacking Mr. Trump and trying to prevent the voters from having the final say and preventing the voters from having an opportunity to actually vote for their selected and their chosen person.
Right.
We have Democrats now that will be, I think, excited by this finally getting this, to climb the ladder all the way up to the Supremes to get a final outcome. But they're going to continue in the meantime to file these lawsuits. Like I say, about 12 states are pending and are seeing legislation similar to what we are just hearing was decided in Michigan. And they're going to try to push this battle through the court system. And again, right now it's up to the states. But now that, again, we have two Supreme Courts of various states making very different rulings, it has to go up the ladder to the Supreme Court for it to now decide ultimately whether Mr. Trump has the right, even if he is, like Michigan is saying, say he was convicted, say by the time it gets to their primary, he is, for argument's sake, in prison. It's not up to the Secretary of State if the party wants to put him on the ballot and he's polling at a high enough rate. It's not up to the Secretary of State there, according to their Supreme Court, to remove him. It's the will of the party by way of the people. But again, it's very different in Colorado. For Black folks, I think we got to keep our eye on the ball. I think you always encourage us to not forget about the other issues that we must ask for political will to address when it comes to the economic pieces, the economics of our day-to-day lives, right? The inflation, even though it has gone down steadily, even though unemployment is also improved quite a bit, there are other parts of our lives that need to be addressed when we talk about the student loan crisis, even though, like I said, Mr. Biden has already forgiven by executive order billions of dollars, right? Not across the board for everyone, but who he has been able to help. He's offered forgiveness in those program areas. There are other areas that we still need to keep our eye on the ball, because whoever is going to ultimately be on these ballots will determine a lot of what affects our lives long term. So if we're looking only at Mr. Trump, which again is a big piece of the puzzle, we got to pay attention. But we also have to be looking down ballot, right? The primaries that affect the U.S. House of Representative races, the primaries that affect your local races, right? Live in your counties and your cities, your parish or whatever municipality. We have to keep an eye on both. So we don't want to get so caught up or maybe even frustrated that we're only saying, this issue is going to, stop us from exercising our right. We don't want that. We also have to look down ballot, like I said, look locally and make sure we are applying pressure and paying attention and flexing our muscle when it comes to voting, just like we will when it comes to the presidential race.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Gene Smith says, Suzette, thanks so much for the thorough and comprehensive unpacking of the Colorado and Michigan ruling in regards to the excluding of Trump's name from the ballot. So, Gene, thank you for posting that. And Suzette, I definitely thank you for bringing us that insight. But we need that. I think a lot of people need to know in layman's terms how this is going to move forward. So I appreciate you for saying that. Conscious Thought, you said SCOTUS Chief Justice John Roberts is desperately trying to avoid having to review this case. Do you feel like that's the situation with Justice John Roberts?
It can be discouraged. They probably wish they could control this not coming on their docket, because remember, the Supreme Court has the ability to choose which cases they take or not. And if they choose not to take a case, whatever was decided at the appellate level in the appeals court will stand. So, but this type of case, like I said, this type of great magnitude is not something that they can avoid. So there are other cases. I know they're just, settled with an opinion on Jack Smith's case that they're not going to take it right now. They're going to make it go through the appellate court first and then come back to them. So they can avoid some of the difficult questions, but that's what they're paid to do, right? They're a co-equal branch of our government that, again, has been given this ultimate power to interpret law. Some would even say create law, because they're the only people that have the power to overturn what Congress has enacted based on the grounds that it is unconstitutional, like we saw with Roe v. Wade. So they have the ultimate power right now, really, to determine who and if, Mr. Trump will be able to be on the ballot. Now, I think we can start to guess or prognosticate as to what would you do. Right? We're going to look at the legal framework, but think about the social and political implications of the Supreme Court just by, let's just imagine they say he cannot be on the ballot. Think about it. Absolutely. Right? So we really have to start to make plan Bs and Cs, because I think the lawsuits were a first step to say, let's get a standard here. Either he didn't or he did commit insurrection. We got the tapes, even right there in Michigan. We know the Detroit News has put out several reports that there are actual recordings of the RNC chair. And according to AP News, and I know we can pull up that article, that the RNC chair, Mr. Trump, was calling two local officials, yet again, recorded, to talk about how they can find ways to find votes and change the outcome.
That's crazy.
Of the election. So we hear it again. We see evidence again right there in the great state of Michigan. And so there are many more questions. Now, on a technical basis, their Supreme Court said, no, Secretary of State, you don't have the power to remove that person. Right. But we still have a greater question that must travel up our court system to the U.S. Supreme Court. And they may not want it, but they're going to get these two cases, and they're going to ultimately decide it.
Absolutely. We got to take another quick pause. When we come back, let's throw something else in the mix as we're talking about the court system, based on a new poll that shows that Black voters are tired of the Supreme Court and the way it's running right now, and are urging the court for new reforms. I'm going to share with you this poll that was done by Black Voters Matter, Drum Major Institute, the National Action Network that was founded by Reverend Al Sharpton, and Demand Justice, how they come together to give us a sense of where we are in our relationship, in our view of the Supreme Court. Because guess what, folks, as Suzette has been, putting it out there, it's going to all roads lead back to the Supreme Court. And how many of you truly trust the decision making coming from this group of justices in the Supreme Court? I'll wait. We got to talk about it, throw that into the mix as well. Stay with us. That conversation is up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Got my sister Suzette Speaks here joining me. Now, as much as we're talking about the Supreme Court and what's going on in the state of Michigan and how you're constantly been telling us, Suzette, you've been prophesizing that is all roads lead back to the Supreme Court, right? In a lot of these big decisions. But this is the Supreme Court, like these 9 justices on the Supreme Court. This is a special group. I have never, and as far as I can remember, y'all tell me if I'm wrong on this show. Here's the faces of the Supreme Court justice. We can take me and Suzette out. We need everybody to see it.
Let's go.
Let's take a look at it. I have never seen so much conversation about the Supreme Court in this day and time like I've seen over the past 5 years in this country. Like I remember back in the day, you remember, Suzette, like we talked about the Supreme Court, but we felt like the Supreme Court really held a position that was like akin to God in some ways, right? Like when a case went to the Supreme Court, we knew that without a shadow of doubt, justice was going to be rendered. But according to a new poll, that doesn't seem to be the case. This is a poll, and this is a poll by Black folks, Black organizations, that shows that Black voters are displeased with the Supreme Court, and we want immediate reform. According to the Just Majority Coalition, which is a nonprofit organization that advocates for the Supreme Court expansion, they partnered with our brothers and sisters from the Black Voters Matter organization, Drum Major Institute, the National Action Network that is led by Reverend Al Sharpton, and Demand Justice, to show that Black voters have lost faith in the highest court in the land, folks. Yeah, according to the poll, Black voters voiced overwhelming opposition to the court ruling to roll back affirmative action, 71% disapproval of the ruling. But it even gets better. According to the poll, Black voters are not just dissatisfied with the current state of the Supreme Court, we're hungry for action. When asked about the need for Supreme Court reform, 85% of poll participants said it should be a high or medium priority for Congress and the president. Suzette, talk to me now. What do you do with that? Now you have a group of people who don't even trust the highest court in the land.
So much to unpack here, Farajii.
We're gonna make some time.
Yeah,
Make
there's
some
a
time
lot to
for it.
unpack
Like,
here.
what do
I'm
you
sorry if
think?
am I
What?
butchering? I hope I'm not. Can you see me?
Yeah,
I'm
we got you.
okay?
You back? Yeah. You good now?
Perfect. All right. I just want to, yeah, there's so much to unpack here. So there's like, I don't even know where to start. I was writing notes and I'm like, okay, let me try to stay focused. Okay. So we have 9 members of the Supreme Court of the United States. And we have to remember that these members, via the Constitution, are appointed by the United States president and must be confirmed by a majority of the senators to have a lifetime appointment, right? So when we look at what their powers say, one of the things I was reading about is that the United States Constitution does not actually say there has to be a certain number of justices. Within the U.S. History of, in terms of our courts of law, there have been as little as 6 Supreme Court justices, and it wasn't until 1869 that we saw Congress make the number 9. So remember, the Civil War was between 1861 and 1865, right? The North and South fighting to save the Union. So 1869, 4 years later, we have 9 justices now as the number, again, as determined by Congress, including 1 Chief Justice. Now let's look at the makeup of our Supreme Court now. And I like to point out, again, there's a lot of criticism that is being levied because we are one of the few countries where people actually even know who's on their Supreme Court. I remember in 6th grade memorizing who the Chief Justice was and who the other people on the court was, and as a part of, like, remember, civics education as it used to be. And again, this is a unique facet of American democracy, where again our courts are not secret. We have, full transparency, if you will, in terms of who is appointed and how. But we have to remember that these folks are not reelected, unlike many state court positions where, even on the on our Supreme Courts of different states, there are ballot initiatives for like courts of appeals that say, shall this person be retained? I don't know if you've seen that on your ballots where you guys live. You check yes or you check no. Or in local courts that are run in our states, individual states, you'll see elections, right? For county courts and for other court positions, other judge positions. But the U.S. Supreme Court, again, is supposed to be isolated from all politics, all bias. It's supposed to be that impartial oversight, right, of the co-equal branch that was created to hopefully interpret fairly, and again, blind to any political agenda, the laws of the United States, right? But what we've been seeing, and I would go even further from maybe 30 years ago, or a little bit longer, from the election of folks like, former President Reagan, Ronald Reagan, and others, that the Supreme Court was seen as a means to control a political agenda. And we have seen most recently, as you pointed out, when it comes to the overturning of laws that have had precedent. And I see in the chat, I love the questions in the chat, when it comes to they're supposed to maintain precedent. However, we've seen most recently major rollbacks, and people are questioning whether 5 people, remember there are 9 people and you just need a majority of 5, actually have more power than anybody else in the government, really.
That's real talk.
Congress members, senators.
Yep. And the president.
Even the president, because they can and have overturned laws made by the representatives of the people based on, again, whether they find that it has been constitutional or not. Now, let's look at some of the rulings. And I would say the most major ruling that helped move us as Black people forward was Brown v. Board of Education.
Yep.
Right? We look back to 1954. We go back to whether the role of Supreme Court there was helping to advance equality for us as a nation, right? We had states who were refusing to allow Black children, Black people into their universities, into their high schools, into their elementary schools, right? And we had up until that time separate but equal. But beyond that landmark decision, we have been seeing a different trend. when we look at some of the cases that have recently expanded rights for corporations when it comes to corporate finance, political finance, when it comes to rollback, when it comes to protection of poor and disenfranchised people, when it comes to elections, we've seen the gutting of the Civil Rights Act. When we've seen the rollback when it has come to the rights of employees to sue, and how much more difficult it has been made by recent rulings of the Supreme Court, there has been definitely a pervasive ideological shift going on with a more conservative leaning court now in place. So many are asking. Go ahead.
But I was just saying that that's not good for the American voter. Whether you're black or white, Asian, Latino, that's just not good. You know, when the ideological shift that you speak of is so prominent, it spills over into us having trust that this court is going to make decisions that are good for the American people and not just good for political parties.
Well, absolutely. And that's why we're seeing, and pardon me for interjecting, but that's why we're seeing this call, not only amongst Black people. There are people, and I'm, again, just kind of fleshing out the issue. I'm not taking a stance on this, but I'm just fleshing out the issue for informational and educational purposes. When we're looking at the dialogue that is happening around whether any President Biden or anybody else should be looking to touch the Supreme Court, right? They're supposed to have the same amount of power of any other branch, right? They are supposed to regulate themselves, right? Besides the granting of the number of people, we talked here about the code of ethics or lack thereof of a code of ethics. And that's why we're seeing a lot more people saying, are you ruling on behalf of the Constitution? Or in the case of Senior Justice Clarence Thomas, now that there have been so many more reports coming out of alleged relationships with billionaires and being allegedly the recipient of favors that some would argue will taint his ability to rule impartially, to vote impartially on issues. And therefore, now there are more questions about whether we think they should actually institute self-regulate. And there are people institute a code of ethics. Let me finish that thought. And then there are others now saying that if they can't, maybe Congress itself can produce some sort of code of ethics for them to follow, which again, I'm like, would that go back to the Supreme Court? And then would they decide if they can actually, Congress can regulate? Right. Like, there's the multitude of questions there. But on a serious note, but people are asking the question, as we read kind of in the article here in the Griot, whether or not, is it an option to add more by Congress, right? They could vote to do that. Will it make a difference? How will it impact democracy? Will we be back at the same place we're at? Now you added two more, and we're still fighting between presidents who appoint more conservative leaning justices and presidents who appoint more liberal, if you will, leaning justices, or some might even say just regular down the middle justices. People who were once deemed liberal are now, moderate right now, depending on how you're looking at the current makeup of the court. But there's a lot to be said about why people are making some of these suggestions when it comes to whether or not there should be an age limit or a term limit. Because right now, the only way Supreme Court justices leave is if they choose to retire or pass away, or if they are convicted or impeached by, some kind of violation where they have, done some kind of illegal misconduct. But we are seeing that they can have an impact for 30 and 40 years, their lifetime. So there's a lot of questions about why, again, this branch that is not technically, it's not elected, right? They don't have to worry about re-election because, again, the other branches have more of a mechanism for the voter to have the final say. They are chosen by the president. Again, they are confirmed by the Senate, which again, some would argue, well, that's where the voters check and balance, because the voter elects the senators and the senators choose and either approve the Supreme Court nominations or not. But they have an immense 5 people in our government have this immense power that, again, I think American people have awoken to.
Yep.
And I'm not for freak, so that's okay. But there's
hey, look, that's Suzette, that's the problem. And those 5 people are working for, are part of the GOP, and it becomes it's like this cluster. You know what I'm saying? It's a real problem. We got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's continue the conversation. Crew, I want to get your take on this as we talk about how the a new poll that shows that Black voters, we are sick and tired of the Supreme Court, and we want reform. What's your take on that? Post your comments on Roland Martin's YouTube page as we're streaming there, on the X platform as we check us out there, and on Roland Martin's Facebook page. And let's continue the discussion on the other side. Stay with me. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punching! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. We have been talking about how there is a new poll that shows that Black voters are tired of the Supreme Court and want new reform. And this is a poll that was done by the Just Majority Coalition, which is a nonprofit organization that advocates for Supreme Court expansion. They did this poll by partnering with Black Voters Matter, Drum Major Institute, the National Action Network, and Demand Justice. Those 4 organizations to illustrate that Black voters have lost faith in the highest court in the land. And I've been talking to my sister Suzette speaks about this situation. So let's bring her back in. There we go. And Suzette, we're seeing the numbers overwhelming numbers. This is not just like 40, 50% of black voters who are saying that they're tired of what the Supreme Court is putting out and what the Supreme Court stands for. This is like 70, 80%, almost close to 90% of those who have been polled are saying, these are black voters who are saying, you know what, this Supreme Court is not for us. And this is a very, very, how can I use the best word to frame this? This is not good. Yeah. If the Supreme Court is the highest court in the land, and as you eloquently pointed out, you have 5 members of the court who don't seem to vote in the interests of black folks in this country or the larger interests of the American people, not just looking at rolling back affirmative action, but looking at what happened with the abortion conversation in that case, in those cases that were presented. I mean, you're talking about a real serious problem here. And this is a very big concern, especially going into 2024, where we may see a number of districts, a number of precincts coming up that are going to be filing lawsuits, and things are going to happen during this election year. So this is not a good place for the American people, for black voters in particular, to be with the Supreme Court. Now, I just want to share a couple of the crew members' thoughts on this. Then, Suzette, I want to get some more of your take. Antonio Juarez, you said, and welcome to the chat, Antonio, you said it's a never-ending struggle. The Constitution is supposed to be valued and appreciated to respect the people who live in this country. I feel like, and I agree with Antonio on this, so if we're starting to rip up, everybody's been saying that, oh, Donald Trump, he rips up the Constitution. If we're ripping up the Constitution because the Supreme Court is so, so biased in their decision making that is more for the political parties than the American people's interest, what do we hold on to as black voters? Where's the hope? What do we have faith in at this point?
Well, I definitely would state that the Constitution and the rights that it provides for is like no other place on this planet. So when we kind of throw ideas out there like that, folks have to be very careful as to what they think they're advocating for, because our system, as much as it has its flaws and challenges, and definitely there are many, it still beats 99% of what's going on in other societies across the world. The amount of freedom we have, the free market that we have, the ability to be able to hopefully, pursue happiness and life and liberty the way we do. But we are seeing, I would call it, I wouldn't use the word bias, but again, trending decisions that seem to go against the precedent that had been established. And again, we can go back to when these newly appointed, those who were appointed by Mr. Trump, gave their congressional testimony during their hearings to be approved. They were saying things like there are precedents and there are precedents that cannot be touched, and we would never overturn these precedents, et cetera, et cetera. So sometimes even the process by which they're appointed is almost feeling as if it doesn't have any really real consequence, right? It's a song and dance and everybody says the same thing. And of course we respect precedents, and then you come in and you overturn Roe v. Wade when you were clearly asked about that during your confirmation hearing, and you'd said that there were some things deemed super precedent that you wouldn't touch, right? Holy grail that had been established for 30 and 40 years, but yet here we are. So there has been not only among Black people, as this poll shows, but across the board in the United States, society as a whole, this lack of trust, or this is the first time in our history we have seen this distrust for those who serve on this court. Again, when we look at what other courts would possibly call ethical violations when it comes to receiving gifts and trips and people paying for your grandnephew's education and buying your mom's house and then, paying it off and things like this, we don't want, as American people, even the appearance of inappropriate relationships that would lead us to believe that those of our society with the most money have the most influence. And that
but you know what? But Suzette, we can't get past that.
They are in fact impartial. Now, they are supposed to be, I would disagree with your statement that they are Republican. However, their rulings are more conservative leaning. And it does beg the question as to whether or not it has become too politicized. But what can be done about it? Do we see term limits enacted by Congress? Can Congress as a co-equal branch do that? Can we see an increase in the amount of justices? That has again been suggested. But I'm like, again, if we end up with maybe 11 or even 15, and we're still packing the court with people who are not necessarily neutral or already have shown themselves to be kind of ideologues, have we made any progress? Or are we just now with a larger number of people still looking at folks who have come via what some would call a political agenda? And again, how they rule on Mr. Trump's cases is going to, I think, either reinforce for some and solidify for others that there is a deeper issue here. But starting with perhaps adopting a code of ethics might start rebuilding the trust between the American people and our United States Supreme Court. But we have, again, I was looking at where everybody is from, where everybody was educated. When I was looking at the lack of just, I guess, educational and experience, I know we have to have a certain legal acumen to serve, where people want to see folks who have served on the lower level courts and the middle tier courts and kind of move their way up. But when I was looking at where they're from and where they all went to school, from John Roberts, Sonia Sotomayor, Alina Keegan, and Ketanji Brown Jackson and Neil Gorsuch all went to Harvard for law. And then we have Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito and Brett Kavanaugh, who went to Yale. And the only diversity there is Miss Amy Barrett, or Justice Amy Barrett Cohen. Sorry, am I Coney saying the right?
Right. Yeah. Yep.
Please forgive me. Notre Dame. And then looking at where they're from, Roberts, Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, all from New York. Clarence Thomas born, of course, in Georgia. Alito from Jersey. Neil Gorsuch from Denver, and I think it's Nebraska, from and DC. Ketanji Brown Jackson, DC, but raised in Miami. Brett Kavanaugh from DC. But I'm just looking at, again, we want people who are hopefully representative, not only of different legal philosophies, right, but that kind of represent people from all across this country as they should be. And people have talked about just, again, selections based on not only legal diversity, but diversity of life experience and origin, if you will, across the country, as well as maybe even school. and
Suzette, let's do this. We got to do this. Let me do this. We got to take a quick pause.
Amy Coney Barrett. Well, I said Coney, right. I'm sorry. Amy Coney Barrett. Thank you.
Let's take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's do one more piece around this, because this is an ongoing issue. Folks, stay with us. Continue to post your comments in the chat. We're streaming live on Roland Martin's YouTube page, Roland Martin's Facebook page. We're streaming on the X platform. We would love to hear what you got to say. And stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20036-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is RolandSMartin.com.
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punching! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad, joined by my sister, Suzette Speaks. Suzette, as we're talking about this new poll from, 4 different Black organizations about, Supreme Court wanting reform. And I'm looking at the crew, what they're talking about in the chat. Some folks said it's time for a constitutional convention. Some folks are saying, like Big Brother Willie Frazier, you mentioned something that I thought was important. You said no document that was made before black and white TV, assault rifles, and the invention of the telephone should be held in high regard. It needs to be redone. Talking about this Constitution, but also looking at how the court system in itself, and Brother Willie mentioned this, that should be checked by both the executive and the legislative branch, and it shouldn't be held to have so much power. And you talked about that with the 5 folks having so much power. This is opening the door, I think, and when we're talking about, how black voters see the Supreme Court, we put up a stat up there, and please, Lisa, let's put that stat back up there, where it says that 79% of black folks, of black voters, believe the Supreme Court is biased. That's like, this is the part about this, and I remember us been talking about this. When you're saying how does the Civil War take place? And I'm just putting this in this context. How does that take place? It happens when you see the breakdown of institutions, the breakdown of systems, but more importantly, it starts to happen when there is dissatisfaction. And when a group of people start to get dissatisfied, when a group of people start to feel like that they're not being heard, then stuff starts to happen. I'm talking about stuff that is counterproductive, counterintuitive for the sustainability of that institution, or in this case, for the sustainability of this country. You cannot talk about having faith in democracy, fighting for democracy, holding the line for democracy, and yet the institutions that are supposed to be upholding the law for the benefit of democracy is being questioned.
Well, I think to the point that Mr. Willie Frazier was making, I think this is a real variance in opinion that we see even in legal communities. And what I mean by that is that it is not settled as to whether the Constitution is a living and breathing document, or whether, as our more conservative leaning colleagues say, it should be strictly and historically interpreted as to what the founding fathers meant when they wrote it. So there is a non-agreement among, leaders in the legal community, legal scholars and others. Like, there is two different kind of rationales when it comes to how to even interpret the Constitution. I agree with Mr. Willie Frazier with regards to there are concepts. Look at even AI. Our founding fathers did not have a concept of artificial intelligence. Let's break it down even further. When the Constitution was written, people were still using muskets that took like 2 minutes to load, and you put one bullet and you put your firepower and your gunpowder and you turn it in and shot.
Right.
There was not even a concept that is a personal means of protection, that a person could own a gun where you could barely tap the trigger and hundreds of bullets would fly out at people, piercing and opening their bodies up and ripping up their flesh. There was not even a concept of that existence. So to say that, and this is the argument between those two philosophies that say that the more conservative thought is that there is a strict constructionist, as they say, look back and try to pretend like you were in 1776 when the Constitution was written, and we have to look at what the founders' intent was. And that is what we're going to use. The basic intent of that provision is what we're going to use to try to color in the lines for what we are now seeing as the questions presented in front of us today. One President Barack Obama said the Constitution should actually be interpreted as a living and breathing document.
Come on, I agree.
There are things that exist now that, again, abortion the way we understand it now. There are so many concepts that they could not even put that we were full human beings in the Constitution. It's still written that you and I are 3/5 of a person. The idea that women could vote to our founders would have been Black people voting. What? We were never intended to be fully ingratiated by our founders in this democracy. But we have been moving the ball towards a more equal society where all men, as the document says, are created equal. All people are created equal, right? Not just land-owning, rich white men, as it was when this document, although I do think it was divinely inspired in my opinion, they saw a lot of truths. They saw a future, but it didn't include everybody. That's why we have sought to amend it. That's why we have seen, different courts, even the Supreme Court that we speak of now, utilize it again. It was law of the land, separate but equal was a mistake by the United States Supreme Court of that time. After Plessy v. Ferguson, they wrote into law that it was okay as long as everything was equal. But we knew it wasn't. You got the lesser school, you got the lesser transportation, you got the lesser ability to live freely and move about. You actually got the Jim Crow noose, figuratively and literally speaking many times, that prevented us from living as full citizens. So our Supreme Court can and has gotten it wrong in the past. But now that we have kind of come to this point, we have to recognize and we have to realize, and I'm not sure what the actual answer is for the check and balance outside of Congress, outside of the nomination process, and how we're looking at who we're considering to elevate to the highest court in the land. But I think it could start with Chief Justice Roberts and actually looking at possibly adopting their own code of conduct and code of ethics to officially exclude certain types of behaviors from which would be deemed partial and somehow, taint the way a justice will rule. All of that, I think, has to start coming into play. And I think people are across the board, Black people and the American populace at large, are looking at them and saying, what are we doing here? Is it really serving us? And how can we improve it?
And I know we got to take another quick pause, but it just speaks volumes about where we are right now, Suzette. And I think that this is another opportunity for Black folks in this country to say, you know what? We need to figure out what the path toward political empowerment looks like. We need to figure out how do we carve out a space in this? And we're not going to have the answer today, obviously. But there needs to be some very, very pointed conversations, because I think that if Black political leadership right now in this Constitution just keeps putting out this message of hold the line, keep believing, keep hope alive, versus speaking to the very real sentiment that people feel like they're not being heard and that justice is not being rendered by the highest court in the land. I think those black political leaders are going to do us a disservice. We have to, and at this point, the way this country is moving forward, we have to come up with a separate game to play. In football, when you get to the line of scrimmage and the play doesn't look like the team is not playing in the way you expect it, you call an audible. We need to call it audible at this point. Like, all right, we're at the line of scrimmage. We're about to go for another down. We see movement on the other side, right? We need to call it audible and say, you know what? Let's figure out what we need a different game plan, because at this point, if we keep going, we're gonna just keep doing the same thing, expecting different results. I'm so sorry, Suzette. That feels like something called insanity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think also, as you pointed out, I think we have to take a break. Sorry,
yeah, we got to take a quick pause. Look, this conversation, of course, will continue. We're going to get back to it, but when we come forward from the break, let's just shift gears a little bit. We've been talking about the super rich. We've been talking about those who are in power. But what if those people in power and those people who are rich actually look like you and me? And now we're asking the question, is black people getting fed up with the black super rich? I'm going to share with you a piece from a column from the Griot, and how the writer says that, you know what? We're getting sick and tired of them too. What is happening in Black America? We'll have that conversation on the other side. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
I'm Farajii Muhammad, live from LA. And this is The Culture. The Culture is a two-way conversation. You and me. We talk about the stories, politics, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. So join our community every day at 3 p.m. Eastern and let your voice be heard. Hey, we're all in this together. So let's talk about it and see what kind of trouble we can get into. It's The Culture, weekdays at 3, only on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in. Joined by my sister, Suzette Speaks. Man, Suzette, we've been putting Suzette to work today, y'all. A lot of work today. She's had to break down a lot of policy and give us an understanding of the court system, the judicial system. So we had to bring her to work. But that's what we do here on the culture on a Wednesday. That's what you can expect from my sister, Suzette Speaks. Make sure y'all follow her on social media and support her show as well, the Suzette Speaks show here on YouTube. And we truly appreciate her. Now, I want to shift gears a little bit from talking about the elitism of white America to talk about the elite of Black America. This was an interesting piece that I saw in The Root, a piece that was written by Dustin Siebert, who pointed out that how over the past couple of days, there has been a lot of chatter from Black folks criticizing Black super rich folks like Oprah Winfrey, Tyler Perry, T.D. Jakes, and Sean Diddy Combs, Suzette. And the question was raised about why, in Mr. Siebert's piece for The Root, why Black America is coming for the Black super rich. And I want to just point out, just take out just a quick excerpt from his piece as to what he has been seeing. And then I want us to have a conversation about it, because I think there is something there. I think Black America, we are all, and I'm saying those who aren't a part of this group of super rich billionaire boy billionaire girls club, there is something that is there. But Mr. Siebert pointed this out, and let's post that on the screen there, please, Lise. Talking about between Winfrey, Perry, and Jakes, and of course Diddy, it feels as if powerful Black people are being scrutinized by other Black folks to a degree that they never have before. We tend to admire and respect the accumulation of wealth by our own in a country that was literally built for us to not have it. But we've also realized that not even Black people hit the B in billion without exploiting real people. And that includes Winfrey, talking about this ongoing thing or rumor or drama between Taraji P. Henson and her called for not being paid, and the fact that Oprah Winfrey, some people are saying, is not paying her, or at least showing some sense of friction between the two Black women. Allegedly, right? But I think the writer is speaking to something bigger than just that little alleged situation. That we are more critical of our Black celebrities, especially the super rich. We could throw Jay-Z up in there and Beyonce, but anybody that you think that has acquired or achieved such a high level of riches and wealth and fame, it seems like we are coming for the next just a little bit more nowadays than ever. Am I wrong in thinking that, Suzanne?
I think that Black celebrities have this additional burden that other people of other races don't necessarily have. So I think it was Malcolm X. I was trying to look up the quote during the break and I couldn't find it. But there was a conversation I recall seeing when Malcolm X was alive, who talked about this skewed expectation among Black people and perhaps foisted upon us by the greater culture that simply expects, because Black people have made it, and made some money, that they in fact and should speak on behalf of the Black masses. That no other race, I was trying to figure out what the actual quote is, but I'm paraphrasing, that Malcolm X pointed out even then, or in his day, that why are we expecting, perhaps because we had never had any Black celebrities before, Jackie Robinson and Paul Robeson and all these others who came of age at a time where, the society was just beginning to welcome Black people more openly in music and pop culture and in spaces that were extremely and exclusively white before, that they automatically had this platform and had an added burden to be representatives of all Black folk, which is not really accurate, because majority of Black people are not billionaires and are not super rich and may in fact have different life experiences. And we have Black folks who are super rich that are not necessarily well versed on issues. who have not necessarily educated themselves or not necessarily are equipped to, or like Charles Barkley once said, don't want to be the role model that our media puts them or positions them to be. So,
well, see, here's the only thing about that. Here's the
Sure.
only thing about that. The thing about that is you want us to, and I'm speaking to Black celebrities, these super rich, because I think it's like a fine line. And I agree with you. You got more placed on Black celebrities now than we did during Malcolm X period 50, 60 years ago. The accumulation of wealth is way higher, right, than what they accumulated. So one is, we have in our current culture, we have this belief system that if you're rich, that if you're famous, then that makes you smarter and wiser and more favored by God.
I think that's not only a Black thing. I think that's an American thing.
No,
I agree with
that's
you.
an American. You see what I'm saying? So
agree
that's
with
the
you.
American thing. So with that, everything else operates from that premise that for Black, and I think for Black folks, it's like, oh, we have these Black folks who are in these positions of economic power, who are in this, high social status. And so we assume that they care. That's for one, right? That they, quote unquote, they'll never forget where they came from. So there is the expectation, but let's keep it real. We cannot put the Black celebrity next to the white, celebrity in this regard. Black people, as the writer Dustin Siebert said, obtaining a level of financial and social power in a system that was not designed for us to attain that. So we expect them to be superhuman in some way, shape, or form, right? So it's you can't be a billionaire or even a millionaire, multimillionaire, and Black person, and then you're mad that people have this expectation that you should be speaking out against issues, or they have this expectation that you should care about those who aren't in the same space, social spaces and circles that you're in. And people are like, well, why is that? Because you came from an oppressed people.
I hear what you're saying, Farajii.
You came
I don't know
from
if
the
everybody
people who
will.
were once enslaved.
We
That's what I'm
see it
saying.
that way. We see it that
Yeah.
way. And I think there is an obligation that some of us who identify with the being descendants, or like I call myself as an immigrant, grafted into the family of those who paid with blood to allow me to live in the freedom that I live and to exercise the freedoms that I have. I too am a daughter of that struggle, and I thank God for all of them. But I look at it a little bit differently, Farajii, or I think that there are others who hold those positions that may look at it a little bit differently. I agree with you. And the reason why I bring it back down to when we first got this thing called a Black celebrity, mainstream identities that were promoted to and accepted by mainstream white culture, is because that identity, especially then, was just so unique and so powerful that it was almost, I wouldn't even call it required, but expected that Black folks, again, they weren't very far removed from Brown v. Board, or were grandchildren at that time from people who were enslaved in this country. So their ideas of who they are and the firm foundation of hopefully what they could bring to the table or move forward, I think was a little bit more clearly connected. I don't know if every Black celebrity or super rich person has that same foundational connection in their desire to be for a cause, and especially more specifically a cause on behalf of their people. There are people with money who happen to be Black, and there are Black people who have money. Do you understand what I'm saying? There are people who have arrived to a modicum of success, but don't feel like it's their struggle to pick up political positions to help forward the cause of social justice or other causes that impact Black people's lives. You have those who may be ill-equipped to do that, because again, just because you have made a lot of money in one industry one way doesn't mean that you're an all-around superhuman, as they say in the movies, stereotype magic Negro, that you have all these abilities and everything, you know everything about politics and all this other stuff. Again, I say that Black celebrities have this burden because white people don't expect that of their celebrities. As Malcolm X said,
no, I don't know. I don't know.
They were trying to create, you know, I don't know, Jennifer Lopez as a political leader. We're the only people that expect a LeBron James or other people, or does the mass media expect that they have the ability to speak for everybody? And is that in fact skewed? Because most of them do not have necessarily, once they've arrived, the same kind of insights to Black life that persons who are living at different economic levels have. And again, who has made it see it as their duty, or are we putting a burden on people who might not be able to shoulder that burden?
No, here's the only reason. Here's one thing I would say, and I know we got to take a pause, but I'm going to say to your argument, now you laid it out. The only reason I say that it is your duty as a Black celebrity, or if you're a part of the super wealthy of Black folks in this country, is because you expect Black people to support you. Buy your stuff, see your show, purchase a ticket for your movie. Celebrities have 4 and 5 different streams of income, 6. They got shoes and perfumes and clothing lines and restaurants and all of that stuff. You want us to support you. But then when it's time for us to have your voice, sometimes all we ask for is like, hey, put out a tweet. Hey, post a picture. Just some modicum to show that you are down. It's like, but you want millions of dollars. Your success came at the expense of poor Black folks and middle income Black folks who have supported you over the years that you were grinding. And now when it's time for us to really take a stand, you can't return the favor, or you speaking out in such a way that is just completely like not in alignment with the people. When we look at, and we're going to take a quick pause, but I'm just putting this out there because I think that we need to be super critical. I'm sorry. I'm one of them people that says if you are at the top of your game and you are part of the Black super elite, the super rich, of the wealthy, then you need to give something back, man. Because you didn't make that. You didn't get to the top on your own. You didn't get to the top. We supported you. Like the conversation around Black media supporting Black artists, and then Black artists moving on away from Black media and seeking white media to support them. No. If you are successful, your success is because some Black person invested in your success, and you are due something in back for the good of the culture. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm gonna say that like that. Suzette, I know you got something to say. Let's take a quick pause real quick. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair. Take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. Got my sister Suzette Speaks joining me as we're talking about this ongoing conversation about Black folks and the Black super rich. I'm asking the question, is Black America fed up with the Black super rich? Now, Suzette says, you can be fed up, but they don't have to be socially responsible. I tend to believe that you do, that you have to give. Not to say that you shouldn't, but it is a duty. You're coming from.
May I just clarify my
No,
position?
you can't clarify. You can't clarify.
Because my position is not that they don't have to be. I'm saying that, okay, just like any other citizen of this country, if you wish to participate in the political process or take a political stance, like LeBron James during, the uprising of 2020 and others, it's within your right as a citizen. I'm not a shut up and play type person. No, absolutely not. If you feel and you are educating yourself on the issues enough to come out and make a stand on behalf of, Black people, and as an American, go ahead and do that. I fully support that. What I'm saying is, should we expect everyone to do that? Is it realistic to expect every?
It may not be. It may not. No.
Do all of them have the political stances that necessarily push Black people forward? We have a lot of Black celebrities, not the ones that have just recently been mentioned in this article, but some, when they have come out and spoken on behalf of, different candidates or different issues, you're wondering, have you read up anything about whether it's the tax code, whether it's other, positions? You had folks like, for example, I think it was Ice Cube at one point was supporting Mr. Trump, not saying that's not his right and saying that he can take whatever stance he wants to. But again, I don't think it's realistic to expect all Black celebrities to shoulder that burden, because everybody is not, and I see you in the comment section, Karen Connor, everybody is not Harry Belafonte. Everybody is not Sidney Poitier.
I don't expect them to be. I don't expect them to be.
Them stepping forward and representing themselves as the soldier, shouldering that burden. But not everybody's built like that. Some people are just really excellent at whatever sport they do or whatever they're, built different to do on this earth, but they're not necessarily cut out for that the public domain and speaking up when it comes to, political issues in a way that is going to necessarily serve Black people in mass. So I'm just saying they can do it. I agree with your point. Yes, they should look around and say, how can I use my platform to help? But everybody not thinking like that is my realistic assessment.
And I agree. I agree with you on that point, Suzette. But in modern 2023, if you are a Black person and you earn a lot of money, you earn a lot of notoriety, fame, or whatever the case may be, or you have a platform, you mean to tell me you can't you don't think about, like, and I'm just trying to think, in 2023, going into 2024, everybody is having, and I'm saying everybody, I'm talking about the adults. I'm not talking about children, obviously. And even though some children are a little bit more politically astute and conscious in some areas than adults.
Well read, well studied, know the issue. I agree with you. That's what I'm saying. Everybody, we learned that with podcasting. Everybody should not have a microphone in their face.
No, everybody shouldn't have a microphone in their face. And I agree with you. And we have seen the number of incidents where you put a microphone in some of these Black folks' face and they crash and burn.
Exactly.
They crash and burn, right?
Exactly.
What I'm saying, though, is that I think there's a slippery slope, and particularly when you're talking about those individuals of Diddy and I'm not going to say TD Jakes, because that's, he's kind of
there's
in a
lot
different
of
space.
TBD, to be determined with Mr. Jakes.
Right. But you're talking about Diddy, Oprah, and Tyler Perry. I'm talking about this idea of the Black billionaire, right? And this, more importantly, this idea of operating the same way that that white billionaires operate, in terms of exploiting people, using people for their talents for your financial gain. This is the conversation that people are having. This is the conversation that folks are having about Diddy. This is the conversation that folks are having around Farajii and the Oprah alleged issues situation. This is the conversation that people have had about Tyler Perry, that we're creating. If our people are in these positions of power, what makes them different from the white billionaire? Right? What makes them different? Like, and here's the other part about it. This may not be a concern for other people, but I think for Black people, it should be a concern. The role, the example, the model that we want to pass on to our children. If we're talking to our children and saying, we need you to be a good person, right? Do we put the emphasis on character development, or do we put the emphasis on economic prosperity? Can it be both? Absolutely. But I'm saying realistically, going back to that term you use, realistically, is that realistic? Because character development, being a good person, is getting pushed to the back. And economic prosperity, being a person that is astute in business and finance and getting money, that's being pushed to the front. So at this point, we're talking about a situation and a culture that is going to be passed on. I don't want to create another group of billionaires, Suzette, if they're not thinking about Black people.
And to your point, I know we have to take a quick break. Because they have got money does not mean they have the character to speak on our behalf. That's what I'm saying. I don't know that I want everyone necessarily with that mic in their hand, with that bully pulpit, saying that they represent every Black person, or that the media says we want to figure out what Black people think and we ask that one person, because they may not actually represent or properly reflect the attitudes of the everyday Black person, is what I'm saying. And to your point, the white billionaire doesn't have this burden.
No, they don't.
Like
of course they don't have this burden. Because they're already in a position of power.
But he can exactly.
Because they're in a position of power. And that's what we're essentially talking about. I got to take a quick pause, but that's what we're talking about. That's what we're talking about, Suzette. It's not about the white billionaire does not have this burden because they're already in a position of power. But if a Black person becomes a billionaire, we hope and cheer that that person will bring some power to the people.
And
all right, let's take a quick pause.
But I think they might see it differently. Bye. Okay.
Bye. All right. Stay with us. It's the culture here on the Black Star Network.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. This is an opportunity for us to be able to speak to our issues. Y'all better understand something real quick. We ain't going nowhere. It is a continual battle that we see all across this country. Revolution will not be televised. The revolution will be streamed.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
He makes sure that our stories are told.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
All right, folks, welcome back to the culture here on the Black Star Network. I've been talking to my sister Suzette as we've been asking
Farajii, the chat is. You reading the chat?
Yes, I'm reading the chat.
I'm looking at the light-skinned sister. What's going on in the chat?
I don't know why they said. I don't know why they come at you skin tone.
Where's Pastor Damon? We got a lot going on.
Oh no, man! Some of these people, man, like y'all just want to. Y'all not even. Some of them. Not all of them, but some of them are just on some petty stuff. Light-skinned sister. Who is that chocolate bar talking? Okay,
let's stick to the issues, but keep it moving.
And let's stick to the issue. Is Black America fed up with the Black super rich? Folks are checking in from all across the country to share their thoughts on this. I think that we're not necessarily fed up, but we're at a point, I think, Suzette, to your point and to my point, we want to see something different. We want to see some change. And as crazy as it might sound, I do understand that some people are going to put their faith into the Black super rich, into the rich and to the famous of our people.
They're going to put
the talented 10. And I know some people might say, well, why did we do that? It's part of the culture, folks. It's part of the culture. Nobody is paying teachers $100 million. Nobody's paying your congressperson. I mean, not congressperson. Your wardsman, your council person. They're not getting the big bucks. You know what I'm saying? Like the professions that impacts people's lives on a regular daily basis, that changes people's lives. They're not getting the same type of money as athletes and as TV folks and as actors and actresses. They're just not. They're just not. So let's not act like that. As Jay-Z said, let's not act like Tupac ain't have a ring too. You know what I mean? Like it's like, come on.
So is the issue that we're promoting the super rich, or the media has placed them on a pedestal to speak on behalf of Black people, and we should, as a community, maybe rally around or promote others who may not be super rich, who actually do have more ability to speak on the issues on behalf of Black masses, as opposed to maybe folks who are out of touch, or maybe folks who don't want the responsibility.
There it is. There it is.
I mean, I don't know the answer because I'm looking at it from maybe those folks who I get a microphone and really not really represent or.
Well, that's why we teach you. That's why we teach you.
I mean, and again, we have seen it in our history. We've had clergy kind of fill that gap for decades, where they were seen as leadership among Black people, and to speak up for and on behalf of Black people, to press and to powers that be. That's still kind of their informal role, but as you stated, within the American culture, and again, not everybody in America think riches is everything and that character doesn't matter, but it is promoted so heavily among media platforms that these people are the best people because they've won, because they have the most money. And again, I don't disagree with your premise, Farajii, that because they're there now, they have an obligation, your kind of sentiment, that they should be looking out and seeing how they can move things forward. I think sometimes people are selfish and don't necessarily want to.
Oh, no, I know that. That's at the root of it.
They shouldn't. Some people are not well versed in issues. Some people are not well read and understand what's really happening. So there are people that can shift between both. I don't think just because you're a celebrity, again, you should not have the ability to make your political stance known, but you have to be really well read, understand what's going on, talk to some people who understand what's going on, and make sure you are actually in tune with what will help Black people the most, as opposed to like your own rodeo. Is a lot going on within people's minds. So,
and very quickly, it's and I don't want people to get it twisted as the stance I take. I'm not upset that if you make millions of dollars, right? Like if you're a part of an industry, if you're working in the sports industry, the entertainment industry, and somebody offer you a $20 million check, and I'm not saying, oh, turn that down and be like, no, this is not good for the people, so therefore I can't take the check. No, that's not what I'm saying. You can earn it. My point is just very simple. That if you do earn it, that you do have a responsibility. And as we were closing out the last segment, very quickly, we're talking about power here, right? We're not talking about power of the individual. We're talking about power of a group of people. And unfortunately, look, if you're already in power, like white America is, white America's the majority, white America, of course they're not thinking about this because they're already in power. But for those of us who have gone down as Black people in this country based on our history, we're looking for power in any way, shape, or form that we can get it. So whether it's the entertainment space, whether it's the political space, wherever we can find power, I think that we should assert ourselves, that we should be very intentional about, oh, okay, now that I'm in this position, let me kick open the door so I can make sure that more people get in there. And not just in a very exploitive way.
Right.
Because that's the premise of this whole thing, is that when you become super rich, that at some point along the way, you lose your sense of morals and values, you lose your sense of character, you lose your sense of togetherness, you lose your identity in that pursuit. And I think that we should check them. We have every single right to check the wealthy in this country, because the wealth disparity is too large, it's too big, and too many of us are just sitting at the bottom holding up a world that is not doing its part to help us.
We got to go, but I think a lot of people would agree with you, and maybe we would be farther as a people if people did adopt that mindset. Again, KRS-One said it was been 50 years of hip hop, and 50 years of hip hop, we ain't got one bank bought, houses that hasn't changed for Black folks, all kinds of stuff. So we got to go. But I hear your point.
I hear you, Suzette Speaks. I hear you. My sister Suzette Speaks. Y'all can always definitely check her out here on Wednesdays here on The Culture. She's here on the last week of the year for 2023. So God willing, when we come forward, when we get back to her, it'll be a new week. I mean, a new year.
Yes,
there'll be a new year.
Always thank you for having me, guys. Thank everybody for watching. See you next year.
See you next year. Hey, yo, make sure y'all follow Suzette Speaks on all her social media platforms and the Suzette Speaks. Also, make sure y'all support her on her show on the Pantheon platform. There she is right there make sure y'all follow her. She's always putting out some great content, a lot of stuff to make people think and talk. So make sure y'all do that due diligence. Suzette Speaks, thank you for being so good for the culture. See you next year.
See you next year. Bye.
Bye. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. I thank each and every one of you for joining us in the conversation. Big shout out to our new watchers on the X platform, Facebook platform, and even on our YouTube chat under Roland Martin. But we truly, truly appreciate all of you for checking in, being a part of the conversation. Cannot thank you guys enough. We are winding down 2023. Today is also the second day of Kwanzaa. So there's a lot of things that are happening. So God willing, on Friday, we'll kind of wrap this year up and wrap up how this whole situation, how this whole year transpired for us as Black folks in this country, and more importantly for the culture. So we'll do our best on Friday to do that with our sister Corinna and Denise as well. But I thank each and every one of you for checking in. Make sure y'all go to our website today at blackstarnetwork.com. Download the app for free. Follow us on social media under Black Star Network. And of course, we ask for your financial donations because it is imperative. It is highly important that in the midst of all of the changes that are happening in media, that we can count on your support. And what better time to do it than the holiday season? So even if you say, all right, I can give this $5 will go a long way in supporting us in this mission. So we want you to be an investor and stakeholder. Go to our website today at blackstarnetwork.com. All right, folks, that's going to do it for me. Stay tuned. Up next at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Big Brother Roland Martin with RMU, Roland Martin Unfiltered. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we will talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture, right here, only here, exclusively here on the Black Star Network. Have a great afternoon and evening. Peace.